Hey everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Snapchat. I'm joined today by none other than Cozy Snap. Cozy, this week was off to a bit of a rough start. I came in at 4 stars on Misery. And I mean, in my defense, it was like, I think I used the term unenthusiastic 4 stars, right? I was prepared for disappointment. But my hope was that with all the combined brewing and cooking of all of us in the community, we were going to figure out at least one friggin' deck where Misery was going to do good. And you know what happened, Cozy? None of the decks worked. Misery was awful. I am miserable myself. Cozy, how was your week with Misery?
You know, it was fun. I'll give it this. She's a fun card, and that's kind of where I thought, right? It never feels it never feels good to be right or wrong in these situations. But I will say, she kind of ended up exactly what I was saying last week's episode. I thought that there wasn't really a need for her, and ultimately that's kind of like where I landed. Like, I was having a ton of fun in the mill decks. And I don't know about you. There are games that you'll win with her, or you'll get certain card combos. You're like, wow, she's cracked. She's great. This is insane. She's awesome. And then, like, if you play if you play for a long period of time in a bunch of games, you kind of start to realize, like, do I need her in this deck? Like, is this deck already doing what it does well without her? And, sadly kind of fell off the mark. But she did inherently get a buff because of Zabu, which we talked about on my side a little bit with the forecast cards getting, awesome love. But yeah, where do you end up? Where's Misery now for you?
So I am, again, as I said, kind of miserable. So for the record, she's at a 46% win rate post-infinite, negative 0.19 cubes. This is like 1-star card written all over it. Like, this is an unbelievably bad performance here. But here's the thing, though. And I think what Misery made me realize was that the actual power of low-cost cards is not irrelevant. And when we talk about, say, the change for Grandmaster, going from a 2-0 to a 2-2, then a 2-3, those changes are significant. And with Misery, when you wipe that power off the board, the result is that you give up those early turns. You're getting the effects again, but you're giving up that early turn power. And the issue, and I'm pretty sure you found the same as well, was that in the decks that we were playing, Misery's destruction wasn't feeding null enough, and so that wasn't usually an excellent play on turn 6. You couldn't destroy something like a Gladiator because you needed that power. And so she found herself in this like really awkward middle ground where you're like, hey, I can destroy, my Rockslide Korg and White Widow or whatever. But then what you're doing is you're just in this win more position where you're just kind of feeding your Darkhawk to the point where now Darkhawk's completely insane, but he would have been insane and he would have won the lane anyways. And so like you almost kind of give up your early game to some extent with Misery, just so you can have a stronger pop off on 5 and 6. But in my experience, it just didn't feel worth it. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think, no, you put it together really well there. I think there were a couple decks where she, shined that you didn't need to just put more power on Darkhawk. Like, she was actually doing something. Like, with the Hood, I found her actually pretty good. Like, that was a good combination. That one kind of worked out. I played Yo Woody in a match, and, like, he had this deck that kind of went off using the Hood. And then something that I did when I was playing the Mill version as well is, like, having Cersei involved in kind of what these cards want to do. But, you said it correctly. We're in this era of all low-cost cards. Let's call it 1 to 3 doing one thing, right? You either have, their ability for their design. So if it's like a mill card or, if it's doing something ability heavy, we now have these cards that kind of can multiply their stats like crazy. The Sable, the Silver Sables and whatnot. And you need that power stat. And so the early game is becoming more, useful than ever. Activate, I think we got a lot of great comments on our last episode. Activate's pretty much, reserved for these low-cost cards too. And so obviously you can't destroy those. So Misery is just kind of in a weird spot. I think people went for it for the Spotlight Week, as we said. I think ultimately, there could be better days ahead. I don't know if you make her a 4-8. I don't know if you make her a 3-4. Make her a 3 cost and you have maybe a cool combo card, but then maybe is it too strong, that on reveal effect. So I just, this is where I landed. I think I gave it a 2-star. Kind of feels weird that I think that might be even too high, maybe 1.5, 2-star at that. But definitely fun. She definitely, had an interesting couple of days of Marvel Snap.
Yeah, this definitely feels into like the 2 would be maybe even a little hopeful with the way she's playing right now. But with Misery, what was weird is like you mentioned 4-8. I don't even think it's enough, man. Like, I've played a lot of Misery. Like, I did a lot of hoping, a lot of coping. And even at 4-9, I think that, like, now we're in the realm of like, okay, you're getting those on reveals, and 4-9 starts to gap that power differential a little bit. It almost feels like a Wong, where it's like Wong's a 4-2. Usually you're destroying like 5 or 6 power worth of cards, right? So it kind of feels like a good trade-off. But like, I was thinking, Cozy, I was like, obviously they tested this. Like, they've been very good on the balance side. What was it that like Glenn and the team saw in Misery that made them feel like 4-7 was the stat line? Because it does not seem to be just making that stat line make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know what they saw. You know what's a change that I would maybe pitch is that I don't know if I mind if she killed everything in the lane. Because then in that way, at least you can use her with like Nimrod and you can do some creative stuff there. You know, like, did you ever feel like, man, I kind of wish she killed everything here? And then that way, she at least had more of a focused design. Like, I get it, you know, it's not going to be as good in certain deck design, but a lot of the times, I'm like, how many times did you actually play her in a lane where you're like, oh, I'm not going to kill this card, but I'm going to reactivate these ones? For me, it wasn't that much. And, you know, I wanted this card to be the Null card. I wanted this to feed Null, and I think for her to do that, we do need something like that to work with a Nimrod or whatever.
I actually agree. I think the design for the card would greatly be improved if it could clear rocks, if it could clear Nimrod, stuff like that. You could even have a thing where, like, I mean, it literally isn't it Carnage's, like, it's some relation to Carnage, right? And so, like, what if it actually got like a buff, like with every single card that was destroyed, similar to the way Carnage does? That could potentially be interesting. You could kind of modify the stat line to a 4-4, 4-5, but it gets a +1 on every card destroyed. I mean, maybe +2. I don't know, man. I ain't a game designer. All I know is that when I was playing this card, I was hopeful. And I was like, this card's not it, man. I even ended up taking Null out of my decks and putting Death in because I was like, at least I'm destroying things. Null was at like 6 power sometimes, 8 power. It just wasn't worth it. And then at least Death was discounted. But even then, Death wasn't getting to 0. So do you think this was just pure bait on the Spotlight week?
Yeah, I mean, so that's what I was going to go back to. You know what I did see a lot of this week is Namor and War Machine. I think people were happy with that. You know, if you got Misery, cool, you might have a card that, you know, ages down the line. But I think this was a Spotlight week. We've seen these in the past. You know, not every card is going to be a must-have. And sometimes we've seen this too. Like, they kind of just go with the fun route. You know, we asked what Glenn saw. Dude, probably just some unique, different design, you know, going with a good Spotlight week at that. So definitely... Listen, this whole month is kind of weird and where these cards are going to go. And I was hopeful for Misery because she had the most chance to be kind of unique. These other ones are much more kind of single-focus designed. But yeah, it ain't it. It ain't it. Even in a meta that could have welcomed her too, you know, with some of the changes that we saw. But it's good to see people have more Namora and more War Machine who's still cooking.
Yeah, there's no question. The Spotlight week is fantastic, and those 2 cards were worth it in and of itself. And I guess on the last thought on Misery itself, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. Do you feel, I don't want to use the word scared because I don't think it's the right word, but do you think that like Second Dinner to some degree are scared of cards like these and releasing them because like the design landscape is kind of fuzzy? Like when you look at Misery, you see 4-cost Odin, you see Grandmaster for all unreveals in a location, clearing the location. You see all this potential. And so, like, do you think to yourself, okay, maybe we couldn't crack it internally, but when we release it to the masses, someone somewhere, we got millions of players, they're going to take this 4-7 Misery, and they're going to take a massive dump on the meta, and we're going to regret it, so maybe we go lower, because the synergies are less obvious, right? Like, there are cards when you release, like, you're like, okay, we have a pretty fair understanding of what this card's do. Silver Sable was a good example of that, right? Yeah, some people were, like, generally missing slightly low on Silver Sable, I think, ultimately, but still, that was, like, everyone agreed it was, like, a 4-star card minimum, right? It ended up being a little stronger than that, but still, like, you had a rough idea of where that card was going to go. It was going to be in balance. It's a 1-card, etc., etc. Misery, the design landscape's so wide, I wonder if they get scared a bit and then pull back ever so slightly just to be careful.
So yes and no. I think there's been cards designed way scarier to release than her, you know, in a sense. But we have seen in case of, let's say, Symbiote Spider-Man. Remember, they even said in their OTA notes, like, we didn't know exactly how he was going to look, and he kind of did prove, you know, underwhelming. I think combo cards and Snap in general is something that you've got to be careful with. You have to find a way to make them fun, make them consistent with the right draws, but not too consistent where it's, you know, just like the only thing people are going to play. And yes, with something of this ability of being able to repeat for only 4 costs, like, is there something they're not thinking about out there? I'm sure that crossed their minds. There's so much on reveal, you know, potential and combos. So, you know, Yes, but also what would that mean? Have her at a 4.7, not a 4.8, which we just deem wouldn't have helped her, right? So that's my curiosity. I'm curious. I think she is going to be one that's reworked or relooked at, not exactly hitting it. Or it's what they wanted. And they wanted this kind of fun card that you could, go all in on the mill decks and get the right draws. And we've seen that before, man. Mr. Negative decks, right? As long as you're snapping on the games you're going to win and retreating on the ones you're not. That, to me, was very misery. Like, I knew by turn 3 or 4 if I was going to do what the deck wanted to do, and that was, in my case, the mill version, or if I should get the heck out of there, right? And so maybe that's just the design they were going for.
And that's going to take us to our next topic of discussion, which is the highest and lowest cube rate cards in Marvel Snap. The thieves of cubes of Marvel Snap, and the ones that are just giving them away, Cozy. And for this topic here, Cozy and I are going to take a bit of a different approach. I'm going to be using untap-based statistics, 30 days, top 50% infinite, because that's our largest sample size. And then Cozy is actually using snap fans. So we have a little bit of different kind of statistics here to go off of to give us a little bit of added variety. Now, there are some cards here that will surprise you. And we went for the 30-day metrics because we had the largest pool of data, and also because it's just a kind of nice recollection of over the last couple months. What's interesting is when I checked like the last 7 days in the most recent patch, although we didn't have enough data to really make a good assertion of what some of the best cube rate and the worst cube rate cards are in Marvel Snap, what I did learn was a lot of the problematic cards that were buffed, nerfed, and then moved around, they honestly weren't on these lists.
Yeah.
Like they're just not on these lists, right? And so I found that really fascinating that some of the top performing cards are not going to be ones that you expect. And we're going to start with number 1. Okay, Cozy? One of the ones here, we are going to be going in a bit of a top 10 downwards, and the top cube rate card in Marvel Snap according to Untapped, 30 days, top infinite 50%, is Gilgamesh.
Not shocked.
And it's a 0.19 cube rate and nearly a 55% win rate. Cozy, this card has been absolutely dominating, and it makes sense. Zoo as a whole has been so consistent over the last, 3 months. So honestly, this makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Gilgamesh, if you don't have Killmonger, these decks are so hard to deal with. Like, even if you have, I was playing a ton of the Scream deck lately, and, I have Cannonball, and, what deck does Cannonball love? Zoo decks, because I can definitely make sense of it. But even then, there's just so much wide power. Like, that deck can't help with all the stuff going on with Kazar and Blue Marvel, boosting those up, getting Gilgamesh up. As we talked about on my side, I mean, Scorn even is going to be in a world with Gilgamesh because of the boosting and giving power there. Over and over, I say this card, they buffed quickly because of the season pass. They haven't touched it since. And ever since that buff, it went from meh of a season pass card to now one of the best.
It was kind of crazy to think that they buffed it by 2, right? It was a 5.7. They took it to 5.9. And then now it's literally one of the best cards in the game. It's crazy to think that 2 power is what did it, right?
Yeah.
But it made all the difference. It really did. Because, we jokingly were calling him Gilgamid for so long because he just did not elevate that archetype quite high enough. But then it's not just that. Remember, they also buffed Shauna. They also, they ended up nerfing Marvel Boy, but Marvel Boy was released. Yep. All of these are now staples in this archetype, which have proven to be legit. The only thing I hope for halftime is, I hope they low roll on Shauna. You know what I mean? And they also nerfed Mockingbird.
I know, and we're seeing all these cards still being used and still being played. Like Mockingbird's still in these decks, still working out in those. I think it's just because Gilgamesh is that vertical lane winner that Zoo desperately needed, and you're just more often than not going to win one of the other 2 lanes. Like you just have to be good enough at knowing which one you're going to win and go at that. And it feels weird because, you know what it may have been too is that Destroy is always the most played deck every season by a landslide, and Hela had that thrown for 2 months, and by a huge amount. I mean, I looked at some statistics. We had 100,000 plus games played for Hela, 30,000 for Destroy. Usually that's definitely flipped from first to second. And with that is less Killmonger and friends. And so, I myself, since the Zabu buff, have been doing a lot more Killmonger and tech cards, and so maybe that'll tame Zoo. But yeah, Gilgamesh is still in a great place, and just super. If you have him, you don't need anything else. I mean, you have all the other cards from pool 1.
Agree, absolutely. Now, the next card that we're going to be talking about here is number 2 in cube rate. And again, we're talking about the best ones first, then Cozy will splash in some awful ones as well. But this one really surprised me. And I had to double check the stats. I'm like, are we sure here? 54%, a 0.17 cube rate. And that is speed. And I actually was super surprised to see this, but speed is starting to make its rounds in a couple decks, running a 3% popularity. And like, it's one of those
We
things
knew
where
it.
like, is this, you just knew it. It's like the sexiest card that like, no, the
We
least
called
sexy,
it.
powerful card.
We both said this. We both said that Nocturne, this is Nocturne, right? We both were like, of the month, you had Wiccan, you had all these unique designs, and we just said speed is not fun, but wow, is it reliable. You're getting a 3-5 all the time, and then you have the potential to go much higher than that at combos. It's an ongoing, so it just has a lot going for it, and it feels like a good plug-and-play card that can fit into a large majority of decks. I am surprised that it's this high, but yeah, speed is just still what he is, boring and good.
I know it's wild, and I even tried to punch speed into some like surfer decks and stuff because he's a 3 cost. I've been playing a lot of surfer lately, and it's like I don't crave the power as much as I crave an effect, right? And I know that like yes, in Marvel Snap you win games with power, and I was getting speed to 11 at times. Like it was crazy how big he's getting, especially when you consider the +2 from a surfer, or even an additional +2 from something like an abs man, depending on what you're playing on and stuff like that. But like, sometimes you're like, you know what? Yeah, I could play speed, or I could play rogue, and I can steal. You know what I mean? And I can steal all these Iron Men that are coming out from all the Agent Venom decks. So it's like, it's kind of funny how like sometimes it's not pure power that you're looking for, despite the fact that the statistics are yelling in your face, just like they're yelling for number 3 cozy. And this one's a little more obvious. It's Gilgamesh's partner. Well, at least in the MCU, it's Thena. Thena. A
Damn.
0.15 cube rate and nearly a 54% win rate. This card continues to be an absolute stellar piece.
This is one of my least favorite cards. Like if we were to do a segment, the cards we hate the most right now, mine is probably Thena in the sense of going against her. It's just a very first of all, let's just say what it is. Age of Venom, fantastic card, very good. Combine that with Thena, even better. Man, it's just hard. It is just a hard card to attack, right? You got Shadow King, okay, but then also, like, when do you play Shadow King? If you play him down, she's still going to get her power probably a little bit. She's going to win and anchor her lanes. And now we've got these decks with the Iron Man and Mystique and Kitty Pryde. And so there's a lot to go off of. It seems extremely easy to get her power going. And honestly, because it happens at the end of the turn, it makes it frustrating at times too. Thena's a freaking great card. Like, this card got touched by one. It's fine. It's completely fine. Very, very solid.
It's so hard to Shang-Chi because now it only gets to 9, not 10 like it did before. And as you said, it hits at the end of the turn. And so, like, you Shang-Chi, and then she's like, oh, cha-ching. She goes off, and you're like, oh, damn it, right? Yeah. So, I mean, extremely challenging, extremely powerful. And you often are fine just playing 2 cards in a turn. Right? 2 cards in a turn. And if there's a situation where you can play more than 2 cards because you got yourself like a free 6 drop from whatever that place is that does that, it's like, okay, hold on. I'm still putting up more power than that +3, so I'll play the 2 down, right? So I think that the card is just incredibly powerful here. And I'm just wondering if you have one from your list that you'd like to bring up here.
Yeah, I mean, not even from, the list. I mean, it's high up there as well. I was looking at, it's surprising what I was looking at, what was very, very low. But what just seems to be, and I'm sure a lot more people have gotten to play it. I'm telling you, yes, War Machine got hit, and War Machine's not exactly the card I'm going to bring up. The one I'm going to bring up that's a Cube Thief that I don't know if we've just trained our brains. Like, if you're listening, tell me if you've lost to this lately, but we've trained our brains to think of Infinite as this card that's always played if the turn skipped, or maybe if you see magic. But the simple play of the War Machine into Infinite now has been stealing cubes very well. I mean, this guy right now is a top 5 over on Snap.fan of stealing cubes. The guy has just a flat 1.0 cube steal rate. It's 20 power on the lane that they are planning to play him on, right? They're probably doing what they need to do, or they've shut down a lane early. That's what this does well. I think for a while we were doing these, like, flood this lane, play Goliath. But it's also just good to shut down a lane early and slap down the Infinite. It reminds me of the Professor X kind of decks. 20 power is tough to play, and then you also don't need to. You don't have to play this very, very good cube stealer at the moment.
I like what you're saying here because, like, the telltale sign of Infinite was that skip, right? Oh, look, they skipped. It's Sunspot, blah, blah, blah. There was a very clean line towards, like, the way Infinite was played. But then Infinite got completely power crept, right? Yeah. Blob was reaching way higher than Infinite. Red Hulk was basically getting higher than Infinite. There were so many cards that were kind of, don't forget the Red Hulk, not Red Hulk, regular Hulk. It's just the Hulk. but from Evo, right?
Yeah.
He was getting up towards that power levels too when Evo was popping off, right? So Infinite was like, why skip a turn? Why skip a turn and play Infinite when I can Red Hulk or Blob or whatever, right? And then you could even copy the Blob with like the Mystique at the time. And there's all these synergies that you couldn't do with the Infinite. So I do like that call out. It's also worth noting, Cozy, that at number 10 on the untapped statistics is Legion, which would go hand in hand with the War Machine and the Infinite play. Legion currently at a 12% meta share for the month, and obviously a core component of those decks.
I feel like Legion, if we do see a competitive play and or draft mode, will be one of the most drafted cards and one of the most just in competitive play decks. Just, it feels like this card that, you know, it's your cheat code. If everything's going wrong, we've been there, right? We've got a location, Sokovia, or that stupid new one. What is it? Weapon X that discards a card, draws a card. It's a card you wanted in there. You're down and you're down bad, and then you have Legion, and it just opens up a lot of possibilities. And you also have them as this insane offense card, you know, with the play with War Machine and the decks that flooded and whatnot. Somehow they've balanced that enough where it's not, you know, Twitter raging frustrating, but just good enough. 5/7's a fair stat line. I think this card's balanced well, and he's a good one at that.
Yeah, I like Legion, especially for plays like when you play it onto like Central Park and the squirrels pop off and they lock themselves out accidentally and stuff like that. I think it has a lot of opportunities to catch your opponent by surprise. Classic gameplay of like, I remember I was in a tournament, I got molt with this. I played Legion on top of Luke's bar on turn 6 with initiative. So basically, it just bounced his entire play back to his hand. I remember Mold messaged me after. It was like, "Yo, that play, GG's, right?" It was so fun. Like, it was just a wild play. It's at one of the Conquerors events, and it was just like, so Legion has like that like super high end, like, hey, this is why you play Marvel Snap, man. Like, this is so fun, and I agree 100%. Draft, this card would be sick. Like, this would be so good in draft because it gives you that like kind of like playful edge of like, well, my deck's not great, but I might be able to steal 4 or 8 cubes with a really spicy Legion play.
Yeah. You know, I want to shift gears and talk about a card that is very new, that has a horrible cube rate, and one that I've built into a couple of decks. It has little purpose. It feels bad to say, but almost little purpose, that I think it can get a power point, and this is one of those cards that if it gets power, it's going to really help it out. Or it can be lowered in cost, and then we can really mess with the numbers there. Do you have an idea what card I'm talking about?
Is it Misery?
It's like 2 back. It's Scarlet Spider right now. Has one of the worst cube rates in the game. And you know, I've tried. This is one of those cards that is like my feel good card. I played this a ton. Just like I enjoy the way it plays. It's super unique. I've had some crazy stuff happen this week, guys. So if you've noticed a lack of my videos, but I had a deck designed around him where it was kind of using just like him, Doctor Doom, and friends because wow, Zabu helped him out a little bit. The problem with them is, yes, you're getting 10 power for 4 cost, but first of all, okay, you know, we have a lot of cards that do that, but it's the randomness. This guy going where you can't control this clone, this is what really hurts this card ultimately, and I think is what's leading to bad cube wins. Like, you know, I can see it now. People play this card, do their combo, split them, or activate them, see what happens, and he goes in the wrong lane, you lose. I've lost more 50-50s than I can count. So this is one of those that, you know, you make him a 4-6, he gets 12, immediately better. You can maybe goad him down to a 3, but this is one of the, he's easy to fix, but right now he's performing pretty badly.
I wonder if this is one of those cards that gets really good at with future releases too. I'm not going to say that I the fine wine, but I'm just going to say that like I've been kind of shocked with how poor this card's performed. Because on paper, like it should be better. You know what I mean? Like, it can't be that bad.
We have Agony coming out. You know, it's a few and far between they release these boosting cards. That's the problem. You know, that's what I'm fearful for. But you know, if they give him a 4-6, you play that into sure. You got a 4-12. Maybe Zabu's involved. I played him a lot with Zabu, thinking that maybe for sure getting him down on 3, which does feel good, but also I just feel like I would rather do other things. I'd rather, like, there's times, and a lot of times, I'd almost rather have Super Scroll in my deck in this meta. I was like, I'd rather just copy their ongoing effects and have 2 random 10 power, right? So definitely one that's not high right now.
Awesome. And I got a couple surprising ones, okay? 2 very surprising ones I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Coming in at number 4, and this shocked me. This was Bast. Bast coming in at number 4 at a 53% win rate and a 0.015 cube rate. And what's interesting about Bast is that it's being almost exclusively played in conjunction with Agent Venom. So what you're seeing here, and it's also notable that the statistics from Untapped will be all in deck and all encompassed, right?
Yep.
So when knowing that, it makes sense because Agent Venom is currently one of the top performing, if not the top performing card in Snap right now. It is unbelievably powerful. It's bringing new life to a whole bunch of different archetypes, right? You do a top 10 deck list and it's like, oh, look, there's 4 Agent Venom decks in here, right? And so Bast is now being played because Mysterio, if it gets hit with Agent Venom, perfect. If you have it in hand and you play Bast onto it, also perfect. And then so all of a sudden, these decks are like, okay, I can buff my deck and I can buff my hand with Bast and Agent Venom together. So to see Bast on this list actually seriously surprises me.
Yeah, dude. Mysterio right now is so cracked. Like, man, that is. There are times where I do all the math. I'm like, I can't lose this. I got the. What are you gonna play? An Iron Man? Maybe an Iron Man Mystique. But then they pop down the 12 power for 2, and you're just like, what just happened? I mean, it's insane how high that can go. Bast is one of those cards that is extinct for 8 months and then is huge for 2, dead for 6. You know, it has its eras, its peaks, its valleys. It's definitely a peak right now for Bast. Yeah, definitely a pretty solid card at the moment. One that I don't that a card that's been in those decks that we need to talk about, that I feel like, you know, people like to say Hope Summers is the one that we talk about all the time. We don't talk about this card enough, and if you're not playing it, maybe it intimidates people and having to do some quick math. I don't know. Can we put some respect on how crazy Sage is in this game right now? One of the highest cube rates in the game. It works in multiple decks and is just a win card.
Sage is insane. Absolutely insane. And it's seeing play in like not only the Agent Venom style decks, but Lady Jane Foster decks with negative are using Sage now because you can Sage and get her so big that you then copy it with a Taskmaster.
Yep.
That's currently the play, man. Like, it's actually insane what you can do with Sage from a pure vertical power perspective. And yeah, this is probably one of the cards that, even though it came back in the Spotlight weeks, people were like, oh, Sage, yeah, I could roll for it, but whatever. I'm telling you, this card is absolutely unbelievable. This might be one of the most slept on cards in Snap. From like a pure like, hey, do you realize on average what Sage does? People are like, oh no, 8 power. It's like, yeah, 8's pretty good, FYI. Also, no, higher.
Yeah. I think when she came out, maybe like, I don't know, the meta decks had a bunch of cards at the same power, and it just wasn't obvious how quickly this card can scale. But yeah, it feels really good. I've been playing Sarah decks a lot, and just feels like a good combination in there. So definitely one of the bigger cube winners, in my opinion.
Yeah, just a couple more here, because Cozy, I have one I really want to give you a pat on the back for, because this is one where Cozy's been like the only one on the planet talking about this one card as being like, guys, when I bring it up, you're going to be like, of course, okay? Coming in at number 6, according to Untapped Statistics, is Sasquatch. Sasquatch. And this is a card that, like, I know that you were high on, and you were even like, when people were like, no, Sasquatch sucks, you're like, no, this card is good. You guys have to get with it here. And I've played a bunch of Sasquatch in a number of different decks, and now statistically, it is it's firmly cemented in the top 10 of cube rate cards in Snap. It's literally 6. So, like, Cozy, are we sleeping on Sasquatch?
You know what it is? It's just that Mobius is not in this game. Like, the only time he creeps out is when it's like there's a runaway cost reduction deck. Like, runaway, obvious, you know, steal some cubes. Yeah, dude. I mean, you're getting the power massively here. You know, you talk about Shang-Chi, you can only Shang-Chi one lane, right? And these decks with Agent Venom, these decks with the 4s, they're putting up pretty good numbers, but they're not skyrocketing like 30 power. You know, and that's why some of these big cards are doing their job so well. And so Sasquatch, combined with how Mysterio's doing in the meta and amongst plenty of other cards, really solid one.
Yeah, definitely. And just to kind of close us off here in terms of just a bad card. I don't even want to say bad card, but talking about one of the worst performing cards. This is a card that currently has a negative 0.28 cube rate. And it kind of came up in a recent video. Someone asked me, they said, hey, Alex, can you make a good Gamora deck? And I said, no. Could you? I mean, this card, I mean, I feel so bad because, like, I love Gamora. I like the flavor of it. All the Guardians of the Galaxy, they're just kind of floundering. We joked about Mantis being absolutely awful last week. And Gamora's in the same spot, 42% win rate, almost no play. She's had her moments here and there. But realistically, man, like, I don't know what you do with this card. Like, it's unfortunate. It's as bad as it is.
It just feels like all the Guardians of the Galaxies are in this role. Outside of, like, I was having some fun with like an Arishem Guardians deck. Like, it kind of works in there because you can like risk more. But we've had the same problem with them. They're just not worth the risk. The risk is too much there when you can play other cards way easier and accomplish much easier stat lines. And so, I mean, people just aren't playing it. They're not playing this card. I mean, think about it. Even if you went with Hood into Misery, right? Let's just talk about that combo. You're getting the Demon. It's almost as much. You're one cost more than that, I guess, right? But with Misery and 2 Demons, like stuff like that is just so much easier to accomplish than trying to guess on a lane, use 5 cost, can't play it earlier. The Guardians are a mess.
And you get her to 512. What does Ajax get to?
Yeah.
What does Gilgamesh get to?
Darkhawk,
right? Yeah, exactly. Think about the opposite side to that, right? It's an on reveal card. You have Gilgamesh or you have Gamora. It's like, why would you ever play Gamora when you can get Gilgamesh up to like 16, 17 power? And that's not even hard. You know what I mean?
I mean, play Namora, and you've gotten, like, at least you're typically getting 16 power overall for the net play because she's giving 10 to each lane, too. And so it's like, you know, you're typically getting 2 cards with that boost. Pretty much all of these. I mean, you go through most of these, and you're looking solid. And you know what it is, you know, these cards that go wide, like Claw, are working really well. But with Gamora, she's going tall, and we kind of have other cards, especially closers or low-cost cards that we've multiplied, like Sage, several times, serving that role for them.
Yeah, so it just doesn't feel like she fits anywhere right now. None of the Guardians do, in fact, right? So that Cozy is a little unfortunate. Do you want to close us off with one last one?
I wanted to close this off with a question to you. Give me a couple cards off the top of your head that you feel like are just in general being slept on, like just like to the listeners, like, hey, try these cards a little bit more this week if you're struggling. I'll kick us off. We talked about Red Guardian enough, but we just have been, you know, saying so much about Agent Venom and what that works. This card, man, is really easy to take advantage on the Angela, the Athena, the Kitty Prydes right now to shut them down, the Iron Mans. Definitely, guys, start teching in Red Guardian. I feel like him and Shung right now are the ones to have in the deck for the most part, and I've been having a good time with them.
I love this call out, honestly. I think the Red Guardian's incredible. It's seeing more play now that the change to White Widow happened. But, like, yeah, that's an amazing shout out. And if you're going to put me on the spot, okay, I've been playing tons of Surfer. I was even playing Misery and Surfer because, you know, that's... It's so funny. The comments were like, oh, a 4-cost card that destroys on reveals. Alex, is this a Surfer card? Right?
Yeah,
it's
right.
Like, of course it is. But what happened was there was 2 cards because I was testing in Surfer that I played a lot of. And I was like, I missed these 2 cards. One was Black Widow, ironically.
Yes. Okay, she was my next up. Yep.
Really? Yeah, dude, Black Widow. I was playing Black Widow Misery, Black Widow Abs, man. And people were like miserable, man. Like people were emoting me in disgust. And I felt bad. I was like, where's my apology emote? Like, I'm sorry, right? Like, it was dirty what I was doing with Black Widow.
Listen, because Darkhawk right now is a really solid card, really solid answer. And when you're playing Darkhawk against, let's say, the Athena deck, it can be tough because you're giving them rocks that are easy plays to put 2 cards down. But when you're doing Black Widow, I mean, board space right now is so imperative. So not only are you doing that precious stop their draw, which is mainly what you're doing with this card, but on top of that, you're able to, force more lanes. I don't know about you, but when I see them put a Widow's Bite on a lane, to me, I'm like, okay, I kind of have that lane, right? Like, I'm going to focus on another lane. I'll come back and put a little padding on that one. But more often than not, I see my opponents kind of abandon the Widow's lane.
Yeah, they're basically throwing the lane because they're like, well, or they have like one really big answer. But sir, that takes us to one of our favorite segments that we do on a weekly basis, and that is the Snapchat Mailbag. We got a lot of fun questions here, and if you got questions for us, let us know down in the comment section below. The first one comes from Blanga Danger, and it reads, I don't know why anyone would ever play Lizard, and that's quoting our statement from the last Snapchat. And then they look somberly at their beautiful Chibi Lizard variant in their ongoing decks. The reason why I bring this up, Cozy, is like, basically they're suggesting they're playing Lizard because they have a beautiful variant. It's the Chibi Rian Gonzalez variant. We know that one. It's beautiful. Are there any cards that you play strictly because you love the variant? I have one, and I'll give you a second to think. It's Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel has been one of those cards where, like, first of all, I've joked about it before. It was on our Conquerors thing. We talked about putting it in my home, right? I play Cap Marvel just because I want to see that variant kind of fly around and stuff, and I'll look at it and just kind of tear up a little bit that the card isn't what it used to be, but for me, that's the card.
Yeah, oh man, there's a lot. For me, it's funny, and he just got the buff, but Grandmaster, I love the Spotlight variant of him with the cards and stuff, and so that's one.
Floating?
Oh yeah, he's just a card that I like to play because of that variant, and I mean, I think I've given my answer. It was a long time ago, and the answer stays the same. It is always my Pixel Coulson. I think it's my calling card. I like seeing him. He makes my day a little bit better. Maybe I'm having a down day. Pixel Coulson puts it right back up until he gives me a rescue and a Drax. But, that can't even happen. But, yeah, it's something along those lines. But, yeah, probably Coulson for me.
I love the fact that Coulson's also your profile picture all the time. It's such
Always.
a beautiful one. It is by far the nicest profile portrait. That's awesome, Cozy. And I should clarify here. I was talking about the Art Germ variant of Captain Marvel, but she has a bunch of bangers, though. The one where she's sitting on the asteroid, I think it was a bundle one, is another amazing one.
There are several good ones, yeah. And it's one of those cards. Even Dan Hibbs is insanely well. The anime one's awesome. I've got the one that you get from the album that's really good, too.
I don't even have that one yet. Damn it! That's the fancy album, the Hellfire Gala, right?
Yeah, that's the whale.
They're all 1,200 variants, man.
It's ridiculous. I haven't bought since then, I don't think.
All right, our next question comes from Beta Ray Bill Lover, a longtime supporter of the Snapchat, and it reads: "My heart will literally shatter for you two if they decide to cut draft mode. You guys mention it every episode."
Yeah, honestly, it's because of what it could do to Snap. I don't think they would. I don't think they will. Maybe they will. Who knows? It's it's up to them, I guess. But I think that is one of the most clear cut. If it is not broke, don't fix it. In game modes, draft mode has been a success. The ones that you can run for fun with Snap are great. And I think the coolest thing about draft mode is it makes cards that you otherwise would not play, even something like an Agent 13, to being much better in play, which is always exciting and fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cozy and I are doing our part, okay, guys, to keep it on the horizon. Make it worse for them to try to cut it. If you guys are thinking about cutting it, don't. Look what we've done. Public Shaming 101 right here. We talked about a bunch of cards that needed buffs and nerfs. Cozy, one of them was Rhino. And Patrick had a suggestion and said, give Rhino the ability to be played anywhere. And then Justin followed up with, I always thought Rhino should be a 3/4, but you kick over a rock to your opponent's side after you wreck the location.
Oh, okay. So it's a claw card, though?
Yeah, basically Rhino becomes a claw card, but there's two sides there. You can have the Rhino is a play anywhere card, so you can destroy any location, or you have the destroy location at a rock.
I think people would be pretty mad, but Bull Clog, I don't know. Although they did say that they're focusing on, as we talked about a bit, they're focusing on trying to have conditions for Clog now, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I agree. They need to. They need to have these out. People need to be able to play to their outs with Clog, which hasn't existed yet. But Clog has never gotten to the point where it is now. And I think the turning point was the Viper change, honestly. I keep coming back to that. When they changed Viper's targeted ability, that is exactly what happened there, as I flicker in and out of existence. Our next question comes from Captain Doge, and it reads: I still think Mr. Fantastic would be good with his same stat line, but with the ability ongoing. This card's power is added to the adjacent locations. So basically the idea here is if he is a 3/2, but he gets hit with Surfer, he adds 4 power to the adjacent locations. So it's kind of like Scarlet Spider, except Mr. Fantastic.
That's it. I like it. I think, what was the stat line?
It's the same. So he's a 3/2 now. They suggested the same stat line, but he did say afterwards that you might even make it to a 3/1 to account for Surfer and stuff like Agents.
We should do a mailbag. Maybe we'll shout it out. Heck, we could do it this week. Put it down below. Just card rework ideas. I think it'd be cool to people are much brighter than us at times, and people have really cool card designs. So it'd be cool to get a whole bunch of these in one list.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Maybe one of these days we should do a mega mailbag. Instead of doing a for second topic, we just do a massive mega mailbag where we just do all these types of things. That'd be a cool idea. But we do have one last question to close us off here today, Cozy. It's not even a question. It's just a statement. It's a statement about you, Cozy, because you said something. You said last week, and Jacob called it out. It got you playing Patriot again, is what you said. Cozy, you can't say that because you're always playing Patriot.
Busted. Lock me up. I am. Lock me up. And whenever you see, if I'm ever in a tournament, I'm going to be playing Patriot probably 99% of the time. Because, come on now. And that's another variant that I play. Oh, a card that I play because I like the variant. So there's that.
Yo, I remember this is a behind the scenes look into something, Cozy. This is a callback from this was a year and a half ago. I was in a tournament, and I think it was the one that Cam Best and Binks were putting on together. And I was against Lambie in a match. And they gave us some stuff, and they're like, hey, what deck you playing? I said, oh, it's this one. They're like, oh, you can't play that because you banned this card or whatever. I'm like, oh, I need a deck right now. I messaged Cozy, what should I play right now? You're like, this Patriot deck. You remember? You
You're like,
me,
I don't
just
play
this
Patriot.
deck.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even play Patriot, but let's just do it. And I like literally, I think he beat me by 2 cubes at the end. Like it was like the closest Patriot game I've ever played. And like it was so funny because I actually don't play a lot of Patriot at all. Like we have like kind of like our archetypes we go to for funsies,
decks,
right?
yeah.
And for me, obviously, it's Surfer. I get roasted for it nonstop. And do you think yours is legitimately Patriot?
Probably, or Sarah Control, just because I always love being able to have so many different like tech options. It's probably my comfort.
Awesome, guys. Well, guys, this is what I'm going to do here, okay? Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. In the center of the screen, we have Cozy TV. He's been releasing a brand new Venom series there. We're going to get a complete breakdown of the history of Venom. Cozy, you did a remarkable job on it. So what I want you to do is I want you to click that right there. Check it out. Subscribe to Cozy TV, where you're going to get all the lore of Marvel and all the characters that you love each and every week. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on that next one.